Welcome everybody to the Saddle Cartel YouTube channel. We are here with our first episode, our first one of the season of our success series, and got a pretty interesting guest on with us today. I think it's going to be a good one. He kind of comes from a state that most wouldn't really think of whitetails, but he's out there grinding it out and getting it done. So, Larry, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. So, tell us a little bit. I spoiled where you're from, but tell us again where you're kind of from, where you're somewhat located in the state, how
So
you got
I'm
into deer hunting. Just give us the whole scoop.
I'm from I guess you can consider it Central Jersey. It's a big debate if it's whether it's Central or it's North Jersey. But I got started hunting. So I got my first bow actually when I was probably about 18.
Hmm.
Um, I got a bow and kind of shot it. Didn't really shoot it too much, but it was a PSE. I don't remember which model it was. So I shot it, but then it fell to the wayside, and I just never picked it up again. Finally, I would say probably around 2017, 2018, I actually went for my birthday and picked myself up a Bowtech Realm X. And I wanted to go hunting. I always told myself I'd go hunting, but I never ended up doing it.
Hmm.
So around 20, I want to say 2023, I went out. So there's a national park called the Great Swamp near me. I guess it's like a federal park. They
Uh-huh.
open up hunting, shotgun and muzzle loading hunting for about 4 days in November. My buddy got me to go sign up for get the permits for it and everything like that, and we went
Sure.
out, and that's where I took my first deer. It was actually a pretty mature doe I took.
So
Um,
that's cool. So you didn't come from a hunting family though.
no, no, I'm
Okay.
the first of my kind. Like,
So that's a hurdle
yeah,
in itself. Yeah.
no one in my family. I mean, that I can think of hunts. Like
Well,
I'm kind of like the black sheep of my family.
Well, hey, sometimes that's all right. But what's pretty cool about that is there is a big barrier to entry. I've got a
Yeah.
good buddy that he didn't come in a hunting family, and just what it takes to get out there and get it done, and then much less public land. I mean, that's something that's awesome, and it's kind of inspiring for others. I know there's a lot of people probably on the group that they are a first generation hunter, and maybe they are struggling. So maybe some of your insights, some of you just grinding it out and what it took, maybe that'll help them push through and get it done in the
Mhm.
end too.
Yeah, so I start off like that, and actually that year, I kind of never really. I always told myself every season I would go hunting,
Hmm.
but I never really did. My buddy actually started probably a year or two prior to when I started.
Okay.
I was just kind of intimidated with first of all climbing a tree, and
Hmm.
then just the whole aspect of field dressing a deer. Kind of,
Oh yeah.
I guess, kind of pushed me away from doing it. So finally, when I got my doe during that 4 day hunt, my buddy actually showed me how to field dress it and everything. Kind of like took me under his wings, and then after that, I decided to get my bow permit and everything like that. And then I started hunting. I think that year I got a small 6 pointer, but I it was my first buck ever, and I'll admit it, I completely whiffed that shot. I studied up on it and everything on where to shoot him with
Yeah.
the arrow, with bow and arrow. But for some reason, when he came in, I aimed center mass of his entire body and just
Yeah.
gut shot at it. So at that point, I knew something was up. I backed out, and then I would. So in the state of New Jersey, there, I guess part of the state's program, they have certified dog trackers that you can get.
Okay. Yeah.
So I actually called the next day. I called the tracker and to help me find it. We ended up going, I think, 600 yards track, and then finally found him by the riverside.
Oh, well, awesome. That's a good
Yeah.
good outcome then there.
Yep. So,
Heck
but
yeah.
that year, I think the only that was the only deer I took that year because I didn't really hunt too much that year.
Well,
And then
and you
last,
might have said what year was this?
2023.
2023. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So then the 2024 2025 season, I went back out, and I actually took another buck and a doe that year. So, and then come to this year, I took a doe earlier in the season, and then that buck I just got recently.
And this is all on the public?
So the first 2 years, 2023, 2024, those 2 seasons were on private land. But when I talk private land, the one was 13 acres and the other was 5 acres.
Well,
So it was kind of like, I know there's a huge debate on whether you should bait or not, but those two properties, considering how small it was, I baited on those properties.
hey,
It was
well,
just easiest way to get deer, get deer into my property.
absolutely. If anybody wants to get mad about where it's legal, they can kind of
Yeah.
go on somewhere else. We bait here in Oklahoma too.
Hmm.
I killed a buck last year on 2 acres.
Hmm.
So I mean that their surrounding was a little bit more, but the timber is 2 acres. So if it's legal, get after it. I don't understand,
Yep.
because honestly, the bad thing about it, it's kind of an argument on the baiting is if you don't do it, the neighbor's doing it. That's how it is here, anyways. And so, hey, you just got to live by the sword and die by the sword, and get in there and get it done. And like I said, you're following all the laws and regulations. Hey, that's a win. You're doing it right. But oh, absolutely, absolutely.
The problem was some stayed nocturnal in that area. Most likely, it wasn't their core area. They weren't. They were just passing through at night, or it was just pressure that was going on that forced them to stay at night. So I never actually connected with anything large enough, but I did manage to get another little 6 pointer last year.
Well, dude, that's pretty impressive. Like I said,
Yeah,
you're 3 years in, first generation hunter, and it sounds like you're just in there getting it done. So I'm not gonna lie,
yeah,
that's pretty impressive to me. I'm very impressed hearing this right now.
thank you.
You
Yeah, so
bet.
this year was my first time doing public, and I must say, I'm pretty much done hunting in private just because of the ability. I This year I didn't get a chance to go scout preseason, so
Uh
I
huh.
did a little scouting during the season, which I was a little wary about doing that just because I didn't really want to bump anything. But
Hmm.
considering it's a public land, there's people hiking, there's people biking. I'm pretty sure the deer weren't too wary about it. But
Absolutely.
I started learning how to find scrapes
Hmm.
while I was out there and trying to find where they're feeding at and everything. So the area I set up in that I took my larger buck at, I found a good scrape, put a camera on it, and have been seeing some regular activity on it. And it just so happens the day that I took him, approximately around two a.m. was the first glimpse I got of him, and I've never seen him prior to that, and
Hmm.
I've had a camera out there all season long. So I saw him at 2, and I think I saw him at 5 and 7 again.
What
So
was
I
this
just said,
date?
hmm?
What was the date?
I think it was the 24th of October.
24th. Okay.
Yeah, it was a Friday.
Okay.
So I caught him on the camera, and I figured, I was like, you know what? Let me get my whatever I needed to get done in the morning, and I headed out. I think around 2 o'clock is when I head out and Set up. Now that same area, I was using a climber
Uh huh.
along with bait, but I don't think I don't think the last time I baited that area was probably about a week and a half ago. And then so I decided to kind of get away from that just because I've just through seeing things, I've always heard that mature bucks normally don't hit bait piles, and it's very rare to take on a bait pile. So I kind of, with my saddle, I decided to go saddle that day, and I went to a tree that never could have climbed with a climber, just because
Sure.
there was multiple main branches off of it.
Hmm.
So I was like, you know what? I set up there. There was a scrape. There was a scrape when I set up to my left, actually. So I was hanging out there. I want to say around 5 p.m. is when I was sitting there with the binoculars. I noticed a guy approximately 200 yards in front of me walking a field edge. And he probably came about, I would say, 80 yards from me. He was just basically walking the field edge and fishing the river that was cutting through that property.
Okay.
So he went there. He went all the way to the river off to my right, actually, and he was. I actually ranged him because I was a little bored, and I was kind of like, "Where the hell is this guy?" So I ranged
Yeah.
him at like 90 yards. And the funny thing was, actually, my friend and his wife were hunting another park down the road, and I even texted him. I was like, I'm screwed. I was like, this guy just completely blew my hunt. I was like, I don't know what to do. I was like, I guess I'll just sit out till last shooting light and see what happens there. So that happened when he was on the riverside and I ranged him. Probably, I would say 10, 15 minutes later, off to my right. So let me get back. Where I set up, I was facing towards the field and
Mhm.
where I thought he would enter from.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that guy kind of spooked him and maybe he pushed behind me, but 10, 15 minutes later, there was a fence line actually behind me off to my, I would say probably 3, 4 o'clock from
Okay.
where I was looking.
Gotcha.
And I don't, it was kind of like a huge adrenaline rush and everything happened so fast. I don't remember how I even caught a glimpse of him. I think it was just I looked over and I saw him and then I started freaking out. So immediately when I saw him, he was off to my right. So I had no cover on that side.
How close are we? How close is he?
I think he's 20,
Oh, so he's
30
on you.
route.
He's
Yeah,
on
he's
you.
on me.
Okay.
So immediately I kicked to the front of the tree, grabbed my bow and kicked to the front of the tree. So I have the tree in between me and him. And at that
Yeah.
point, the wind was right for me too. That was the other thing
Uh-huh.
too, is I kind of played the wind right to make sure it was kind of if he came in the way I thought he was going to come in, if I couldn't get a shot on him immediately, he probably would have winded me. But luckily, he came from that direction and he was down. He was upwind for me,
Mhm.
so he had no idea I was there. And I kind of made sure I didn't make too much movement and noise. So when I kicked around a tree, I grabbed my bow, drew back. But when I drew back, my platform actually kicked out sideways.
Mm.
But luckily for me, I actually put the strap over another one of the main branches. So it kind of stayed. So that
Yeah.
whole entire time, I'm just sideways on the platform and kind of just like I'm shaking like a leaf.
Yeah.
I'm shaking like a leaf, and I drew back, and I'm like, my bag's in my way, and all of a sudden I'm like, I'm feeling like my bow is getting caught on something, and I look up, my bow hook went actually right under the bowstring and right next to the cam.
Oh,
So
shoot.
luckily I didn't shoot because I was going to shoot at that time. But if I would have shot, I guarantee would have derailed the bow.
Oh my goodness, yes.
So I kind of like finagled my bow out of there and I kept aiming at him. At that point, I would say he was probably 20 yards, if not maybe a little under. But when I had him aimed, he was making a scrape. And like he looked like he was pissed. He was
Yeah.
pulling at that ground, just tearing up the branch above him. So I was aiming, and at one point I let down and I pulled back again, but there was just too much stuff in the way, and I didn't really want to risk a shot, so I kind of waited. He started to move to uh to my right. Actually, he started to move, so the tree was now in my way. So
Mhm.
without even thinking about letting down, I at full draw, I kind of put the bow above my head and then came around a tree and made a weak side shot because he came down to a ditch, and as soon as he came there, he stopped. So immediately, I aimed for the heart and just let it fly. So then, when it hit him, I started using the G5 Megameats this year actually,
Okay, yeah.
and this was kind of I took a doe and the doe dropped. The doe got earlier in the year actually went 60 yards with it and had a good blood trail. So I was pretty happy when I shot that buck. When he took off, I actually saw blood just coming out of him. So he ran approximately, I think I ranged it approximately 13 to 15 yards. He ran, stopped, and then kind of stumbled and fell. From the time I shot him to the time he fell to the ground, I think was around 15 seconds. He was done.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie, when you're telling this story and just kind of the stuff that happens, it kind of blows my mind because I think there's a lot of veteran hunters out there that would have just panicked, freaked out, platform kicking out, and I can only just imagine the chaos. And for him to be at 20 yards,
Yeah.
and luckily, like you said, he was worked up, working a scrape.
Mhm.
That all that probably saved you, but holy smokes, you know what I mean? You're catching your bow hook and all the things. It's like to keep your composure, to get back on the weak side, and then to anchor in and execute a shot, dude. like I said,
I
I'm
mean,
I'm I'm pretty impressed. I'm not gonna lie.
that
I'm
whole entire
impressed.
time I was freaking out. I was freaking out. I was like, "This is the buck I'm
Oh,
after." I was like, "Oh god." I was like, "I'm gonna mess something up or he's gonna see me moving." Like, I was trying not to move as much as possible. When that platform kicked out, I was like, "Crap." I was like, "What am I gonna do?" So I don't even remember how I did it. I think I had both feet on there and I was kind of wrapped, but luckily my tether was tight enough that I kept me
tight.
pinned to the
Yeah.
tree. So when I turned around, I didn't honestly, a lot I'll tell you what, a lot of it had to do with luck because
Well,
luck for me, luckily I put that strap on my platform around another main branch or else
yeah.
that might have just kicked out completely and I would have
Oh,
been screwed.
man, man.
But
Well, hey,
it
I'll take a little luck. I could use some right now. I
exactly.
know a few guys that could use some.
But I'll tell you
So,
what, it was the greatest rush I've ever felt, especially
oh,
taking a buck of that size. I never in a million years would have thought I would have gotten something that size.
oh, dude, no, that's awesome. And like I said, I can only, and I'm not just sitting here trying to church you up. I just
Mhm.
feel like there's more for you to come. I think you got that one right there. And that caliber, I feel like you're just going to get in there and search for that kind of buck every time
Yeah.
now. You know what I mean? And to chase that high and that adrenaline just like that, I'm
It's
pretty
just
impressed with this story. I love it.
I was even telling my wife, I'm like, now that I got this one, this buck, it's like, holy crap. I feel like it's all downhill from there. It's just like, what am I gonna do now? Now I'm always gonna be trying to chase that mature buck, chase it and just scout as much as I can and everything. But it was just insane. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a more perfect shot and everything like that. So
Dude.
when I field dressed it, I wanted to see if it was definitely a hard shot, and I
Uh-huh.
noticed. So it hit one lung, definitely hit one lung, and then it completely tore through the heart and actually nicked the bottom of the opposite side lung. And like I said,
Heck
I'm
yeah.
surprised he was down in 15 seconds.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, I could never have asked for a more perfect shot
Dude,
than
when you
that.
drill them. So take me back real quick. I want to know how long after the shot you watched him fall. I'm assuming because he was pretty close.
Hmm. Yeah, he
Well,
was from where I was standing, maybe 15, 20.
yes.
He was close.
So
Like I even took a shot. I
what
took a
was
shot with my
that?
phone.
What was that adrenaline dump in the tree with your platform kicked to the side?
Uh,
How long did it take you to get down?
I so immediately when I saw him sitting there, I took a photo with my phone and I
Yeah.
sent it to my buddy. I was like, holy! I was like, I was like, I made it happen. I was like, I can't believe it. I was like, I even called him. I was like, dude, I was like, I shot the buck I was after. And he's like, see, I told you. He's like, just because a person walked through doesn't mean your hunt's ruined. And I was like,
Yeah.
I know. I was like, I can't believe that happened. The whole entire time, my adrenaline was rushing. I was like trying to get down the tree. I'm like shaking the whole entire time. I was just like, oh my god. I was
Uh,
like, I couldn't even explain that kind of feeling I got from that.
dude, that is awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
So
so I should have asked at the beginning. You said you were married. Do you have any
mhm.
kids?
Yes, one daughter. She's
Did you
2.5.
did you oh just a little young. I guess
Yeah.
last year I brought my little 2.5-year-old at the time. You know,
Mhm.
she come out and she enjoyed it. Did you get to experience any of it with your family?
So my wife's not against me hunting. I mean, she's a little bit of an animal lover, but what I explained to her is like I try and take ethical shots. Like I try to make sure that deer is done within
Yeah.
less than a minute. And I guess that kind of put her at ease, but she's never been against me hunting. So,
Well, so we're animal lovers. We have
mhm,
gobs of animals out here.
yeah.
And I don't want to try to get into the politics of it, I guess, and we can move on. But when you realize what it does for the animal itself by you being a hunter, you kind of look at it in a different light. Whether that's conservation, whether that's the food to sustain yourself, health of the herd itself. You know, because I don't know what your deer population is there in Jersey, but you know we got them everywhere. You can't drive down the highway without seeing 12 of them in a ditch. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So
Yeah, that we're the same way.
yeah.
We're the
So when
same
you
way.
break it down like that, and us as hunters, we all know this, but um, when you lay it out to people like that or whatever. So who knows, maybe you can get her to come around.
So it's funny because so this year I actually bought a new bow. I bought a
Mhm.
Bowtech Proven 34,
Mhm.
and I bought it in February. I put about 1,200 arrows through it, and
Woo.
actually just switched my strings out to
Yeah,
the
say
Gas
burning some
System X.
strings.
Oh yeah. So I switched out, and then the one day my daughter came out and let her hold the bow. I told my wife, I was like, future bow hunter with me.
Yeah.
She's like, you're nuts. She's like, she's not coming with you.
Oh, yeah.
I was
We'll
like,
see.
she's coming with me.
Yeah, we'll see.
If not, and we get a son, my son's definitely coming with me if I ever get a boy.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I would love to
Well,
experience it.
go back through there. You said you got a new bow. So I love the story. I don't want to get away from it, but I love the deer story. But go into your equipment a little bit. What were you using? Like run through your bow, and then we can kind of go through your saddle setup and things of that nature too.
So I'm shooting a Bowtech Proven 34.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm I'm about a 29.5 inch draw length, and I
Okay.
shoot about a 29-inch arrow.
Okay.
So I'm shoot this year actually. Yeah, I also changed because I was always shooting the Easton 6.5s.
Yeah.
I finally switched out to the Easton 5.0 match grades,
Okay. Yep.
and I even made a full setup.
Sweet. Heck
Like
yeah.
it's nothing huge, but I decided to start building my own arrows this year.
Yeah.
So I switched out to the Easton 5.0s, and I kind of started getting into that science of building a nice 15% FOC arrow.
Mhm.
So what I actually did was I use a 125 grain Megameat.
Okay.
I used the hidden insert that comes with the Easton 5.0s,
Sure.
with also the collar that comes with it too. And for my vanes, I used the Boning heat vanes.
Okay.
So I do them at a three fletch, left helical using the Arizona Easy Jig. So it's got a good helical to it.
Do you
And
know
I
what
just
your total arrow weight is?
I think if I'm correct, is 440 is my
440.
total.
Okay.
Yeah, 440 with what I calculated at 15%, a little above 15% FOC on it.
Okay.
So yeah, that's my full set, and I also run a wrap on the Boning wrap, 4 inch
Okay.
wrap on it
Yeah.
too. Just if I ever need a refletch, it's considering I've done refletching without the wraps, I'm glad to be using the
The
wraps.
wraps are the only way to go. And if
Yep,
something happens, you just start over. Don't
yep,
try
and
to don't try to act like you're gonna just glue it down or anything. Just start
it
over.
it's so much easier with it
Uh-huh.
because I mean I don't have to worry about gouging out the carbon or anything like that.
Yep.
I wanted to run lighted Knox, but if I were to run a lighted Knox, it would kind of throw off my FOC, so I kind of left it at non-lighted.
Man, I've gotten away from them. I ran lighted Nox for, I don't know, a few years at least. I was always using the nocturnals.
Hmm.
And I got away from them just because I thought for the price, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze really, because it just seemed like it never failed. I had some that I never even shot that sat in my quiver for a season, and they didn't work. You would clip them to a string and they'd come on, or they wouldn't work
Yeah,
when you shot. And so I'll be honest with you, I got away from them. I think there's a some I've heard people say that there's a couple other brands out there that are maybe a little better these days, but
it's funny because
I don't know.
I follow a couple of the YouTube guys,
Hmm.
and the one that the one YouTuber was talking about was actually an Amazon brand one.
Yeah,
He was dead set on it. It was like I think like $15 for a set of them.
yeah,
But the problem for me was those knocks are about 25 grain.
yep,
So it would take my FOC from like 15% down to 13, which is still good. But it was just like I've shot the past 2 years. I shot nocturnals,
uh huh,
and it was like never really saw the need for them. I mean, I was able to always track my arrow,
yeah,
and it was just like they're cool and everything, especially for target shooting in lower
yeah.
light, like being able to track your arrow. But I didn't find anything necessary. What I actually did with my vanes is use a white wrap and white white vanes
Same.
just to
Yeah, same.
allow me to see it easier. And plus, if allowed me to see what kind of blood's on it easier
Same.
too.
I'm doing the same thing, and I think filming is maybe where the lighted knocks would come into play a little bit more, but I don't know. Even then, I'm just kind of I just haven't been a big fan, but
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Speaking
So
of filming, actually, I keep a GoPro
yeah,
attached to my stabilizer,
yeah.
and I was pissed about myself. I didn't turn on my GoPro.
Well, you
I
had
was
enough
like,
going on in the tree.
fuck.
Well,
I was like, I didn't even think about it after. I was like, oh crap. I looked down at my phone. I'm like, I have my GoPro. I was like, I didn't even turn it on. And I remember when I was walking, I was like, I checked to make sure I had enough battery on it.
yep.
I was like, oh, I have the perfect amount of battery. I was just like,
Yeah, we'll let it
but
slide with all the stuff you had going on. You forgot the GoPro.
yeah. I would have loved to. I would have loved to have it just for kind of that memory. But I'll tell you what, it's, this hunt was one to always remember. I mean, I have a terrible memory, but even now, I still remember exactly
Oh,
what happened.
no, yeah.
But
You won't
it's
forget that. It's funny because I have the first deer I ever shot with a bow. I've got it on a GoPro on a film too. And I actually made it into a short earlier in the summer and stuff like that. But it's kind of crazy because a lot of people just don't have that, and you got to rely on just your memory and all that. Luckily, as hunters, we usually don't forget this kind of stuff. You know what I
yep.
mean? I can tell you every deer I've shot, whether I filmed it or not. So
Mhm.
you know, it's just, there's nothing like it.
Yeah.
But
I kind of wanted to try and get into self filming mainly just for myself.
sure.
So I keep the GoPro on my front stabilizer, and I have been possibly looking at getting the Insta 360
Oh, I
for
know.
kind
Those
of
are sweet,
just
ain't
right
they?
above me. I don't have the. I'm spending too much money on other stuff.
I'm telling
Hunting
you.
aspect.
I'm
It's a
telling you.
vicious cycle.
So what saddle and platform and sticks? Give us your rundown of everything from saddle platform sticks to how are you carrying it in. That way, if anybody's watching this that's kind of wanting to get into the saddle hunting game, they can either have an idea of where to look or just in general, like what it takes to get out there and get going.
So I ran last year. It was the first year I started saddle hunting.
Hmm.
I bought a full tethered setup. So I
Okay.
run the tethered. I think it's Ultra Lock.
Yep.
I bought the SD version, and actually this year I bought the pouches for the side.
Okay.
So I run that, and then for my platform, I run the Predator V in XL size,
Yeah.
and then for my sticks, I run 4 Skeletor sticks.
Dude. I,
Um,
I love the Skeletors.
yeah, I definitely like them, but now that I've been looking, and it's like starting to go down that rabbit
Now
hole,
you're
trying
getting
to find a
bougie.
lighter stick. So with my Skeletor sticks, I run the bottom 3-step aider, and then the second
Uh-huh.
one up a 1-step aider. This hunt actually, I wasn't necessary to use it. I just pretty much used all 4 sticks pretty close to each other, and I was decent height above in the tree, so I didn't need to go any higher than that, so I didn't use the aiders.
Yeah.
But it's funny talking about that. I actually just purchased 40-foot length of the Ape Canyon
Yep.
Elite,
Yep.
and I actually went out and got a Petzl Grigri to the tether locker, and then the whole quick link. So my thought about that was just to get that. I forget who was mentioning on the group, but someone was saying like if you ever get in a bind and you want to self rescue, it's the easiest way.
Yeah.
So even if I was going to multi stick with it, and it just the added safety of being able to drop myself down to the ground, and even after a hunt, be able to just rappel down a tree and just pick up my sticks instead of having to worry about a lineman's belt or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I purchased that. I think last week I purchased that, and then my buddy's like, "Hey, our swamp hunt is the 4-day swamp hunt is actually coming up next week." So he's like, "Hey, we'll use a climbers, but if we want, we can go saddle hunting."
Uh-huh.
So then he said that, and then I've been looking at one sticking.
Yeah. Another rabbit
So,
hole.
yep. And then yesterday I decided to purchase I think it was the solo stick.
There you go.
So I dropped money on the solo stick. So the amount of money that was, I'm hoping I like it. I'm sure I'll like it a lot much better than multi sticking, but we'll see how it goes. I'm hoping
See,
it comes in before that.
and that stuff's so foreign to me. Everybody that or I shouldn't say everybody, but like I hang out with Trey a lot, obviously, and and he's a big one stick guy. And to me, it just seems so foreign. I just can't get my head wrapped around. I'm sure if I was to just slow down and think about it and have him show me
Mhm.
something, but I just can't get away from just carrying in multiple sticks. And I'm pretty tall too, so I
Yeah.
can get high with just the 4 sticks. I can set 2 of my sticks on ground level and then only have to hang 2 more, and I'm pretty high,
Yeah.
and so
I'm 6'2", so
there
I'm
you
the
go.
same way. Like
Yeah,
once I get up on my stick and I set the next one, it's like I'm 10 plus feet up off
there
the
yeah,
ground already.
exactly.
So it's nice like that. But just the one stick. So I, in order to carry in all my stuff, I actually bought the tethered fast pack.
Uh-huh,
And so what I do is I keep my platform pouch attached to the fast pack,
uh-huh.
and then I strap my Skeletors to the back of that.
Okay,
So that's how I run.
sweet.
It's definitely lighter than a climber walking in and less bulkier, but I found that it's still like it's still got a decent amount of weight to it. And
Oh, yeah, so
that's what kind of got me towards looking towards lighter sticks.
that's true. I huffed my pack around all evening today, like, just being a bozo looking for the right tree.
Hmm.
And I'm not joking. I'm usually not one to complain about weight, but as much as I hiked today, I was like, man, this thing is getting heavy, So,
Yeah.
but I tell you what, so is the weight when you're talking about your swamp hunt coming up, what draw like what's making you lean towards the climbers over the saddle in general? Like, is it just a weight
So
factor?
we're we're gonna be shotgun hunting for this.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
we actually set up last week our climbers. We found so going back to the whole public and scouting and everything, I've never done that because the
Yeah.
private land I was hunting, there was honestly no need. It was such a small property to scout and everything. But over over this year, I just was watching a ton of YouTube videos and what signs to look for, where to look for. So what I actually did is I spent a day scouting the area, and I actually found some good scrapes and everything. So I told my buddy, I was like, let's set up our climbers, just because I'm not gonna lie, climbers are the most comfortable thing you can hunt out of.
Sure.
Like I could fall asleep. I've fallen asleep in them actually. So we decided to just set up our climbers, find a spot, a good spot, and set up our climbers there. And if we decide, we made a game plan. The first 2 days, if we don't see too much, we'll probably just go saddle hunting, and go several locations I scouted out too.
Get a little
That
bit more mobile.
Yeah, so there was like where we set up was a heavy traffic area. Like
Mhm.
we were seeing a lot of deer trails and everything. But then we found another spot with several rubs.
Okay.
So we're gonna leave that alone and hunt the climbers, and then maybe after that, after the 2 days, we'll probably go hunt those areas for that.
Sweet. Sweet. And this is all still in Jersey.
Yep, all still in Jersey.
Sweet. So how many tags do y'all get?
So for fall for us, it's unlimited antlerless, and it's one buck tag. And
Okay.
then so fall boat actually ends today. And then what starts from November 1st, I think, until the end of December is considered what they call permit bow for us. So permit bow requires us to actually buy a zone permit. So the whole entire state is separated into different zones, and you
Mhm.
have to actually buy a permit for that zone. In permit bow, you're allowed another buck tag, and it's the same thing, unlimited antlerless. And then we go into winter bow from January 1st, and most zones, I think, until February 15th is winter bow.
Oh,
That
wow.
doesn't
That's
require a zone permit or anything. That you can go wherever you want. You just have to pay attention to the zone you're hunting, because some zones end earlier than others.
I see. Yeah. So it's a
So
little different
in a
structure than what most are probably used to.
yeah, so in an entire hunting season, you're allowed up to 3 bucks.
Oh, okay.
But
Sweet.
so the zone that I'm hunting in, actually, they have an antler requirement that there
Okay.
must be 3 points on at least one side
At
of the
least one
deer.
side. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Heck yeah,
So
dude. Well, dude, I'm
yeah.
not gonna lie. Like, I love this one. This was a good one. I love the story. Feel free if there's anything else that we left out. Like I said,
No,
all the
I
stuff that
mean,
you did to pull that one off,
I
dude.
I mean,
I love it.
just to get a buck that size, and that's literally I think my fifth deer I've gone in my lifetime
Dude,
of
that's
hunting, which
awesome.
is very short lifetime of hunting. So I
Well,
mean, just it's insane. It's an amazing feeling, and just talking about it just gets my heart pumping.
and
I
like I
mean,
said, before we hopped on, we kind of chatted a little bit. And
yeah,
whenever I think of New Jersey, I don't think of whitetails. You know, that's the last thing I
yeah,
think of. And you got in there, and you're being a new hunter, first generation hunter, um, and getting in there and killing a stud buck, dude,
hmm,
dandy buck. And you ought to be proud. You ought to have that feeling that we all are
yeah,
chasing. You know.
definitely. It's just like you said, you don't think of Jersey as a whitetail state, but I've just fallen to different Facebook groups in Jersey. I've seen
Uh-huh.
some bigger deer than that, and I'm very surprised just because of how many hunters there are and how I wouldn't say little, but our public land, a lot of it is overpressured just because there's
Oh
so
yeah,
many hunters, and
yeah.
we're a relatively small state compared to our bordering state, Pennsylvania.
Hmm.
So it's just like it's amazing to be able to get a deer like that so close to home for me.
Dude.
And it's just like I said, I never in a million years would have thought I could have gone something like that.
Nah, dude, that's awesome. Like I said,
Yeah.
it's an accomplishment, and like I said, I see many more to come. Just whenever you're is having the success, like I said, you've killed multiple. It ain't like this is just the
Mhm.
first one and it was a fluke. No, you're out there grinding and you're getting it done. And I see a lot more coming. As many rabbit holes as you're jumping down, that you
Yep.
can tell you're ate up with it. And as a lot of us are, you got a lot. You got a lot to come. And I'm looking really forward to seeing what
Yeah.
this next one's going to be. And maybe we'll do a follow up little podcast here, little interview, and we'll talk about it again.
Yeah, I have my eye on one possible. There's two possible ones, but the one broke tine, and I think the one with the broken tine might have gotten a fight with the buck I just got
Yeah.
because his right cheek, when I got him, I didn't realize it was swollen and
Oh
actually
yeah.
was infected because he got in a fight with a different buck, and I think it's the one that one that I was looking at that had broken tines. So there's two that I'm getting on camera, but I'm kind of like at the point now. I've gotten this big one.
Yeah.
It's like maybe I'll if I see him, I'll take a look and maybe give him a year or so. Now I'm really focusing on just bagging a couple does and filling the
Man,
freezer.
kills a slammer. He's already passing bucks.
We'll see. I mean,
uh,
if he comes in front of me, I mean, I'm going to be
yeah.
very hard pressed on passing him. But I'd be curious to see, especially because the amount of matures that I've been seeing in that area. It's like the pressure's not too bad, so it's kind of like I feel a little more at ease that if I were to let it go for the year, I'd possibly see it next year,
Yeah.
considering the age of them.
Yeah.
It's just, but the thing is, it might not. They might not get taken by another hunter, but a lot, like you said, a lot of the deer around here, they run in front of a car and they get
Oh
hit.
yeah. Yeah.
So like that's the biggest thing. Going back to the whole thing about animal owners, is just controlling the population. Because if you don't control that population, it
Yeah.
just it takes over.
Oh
On
yeah.
top of it, they don't eat the invasive species of trees or brush, so those start taking over the native plants and everything like that. And this is what I explained to my wife. Is just we go for the ethical shot
Hmm.
and we try and put down that deer as quick as possible. And at the same time, you have to look at it. I told her you have to look at it. A deer that gets hit by a car is going to suffer.
Hmm.
So I mean, that's the most.
Compared to your arrow that you said was less than 15 seconds, probably.
Yep,
There
exactly.
you go. There you go.
So that's what I
Yeah.
tell her. I tell her all hunters, for the most part, try and go for the most ethical shot possible.
Absolutely.
Because the
Absolutely.
last thing we want to do is see a deer suffer.
Absolutely.
So
Well, dude,
yeah.
I appreciate you, man. Thanks for hopping on. Like I said, I'll hit you up, and
Hmm.
I look forward to seeing more to come. Uh,
Definitely.
I just want to ask everybody if anybody's watching, just be on the Facebook group, engage. We love it. Larry posting his photo is just how we got to reach out and have a little fun conversation. And I encourage anybody that gets a buck this season, any deer for that matter, celebrate it. We'd love to reach out to as many people as we can, and like I said, have little fun chats and conversations. And Larry, congratulations again.
Thank you. Thank
I
you.
just, like I said, appreciate you hopping on, and good luck the rest of your season, man.
Thank you. You too.
All right, man. We'll holler at you
All right. Take care.
later.